It wasn't supposed to be a revolutionary moment in American politics. Vice President Kamala Harris had done what she'd done hundreds of times before, visited a college campus to speak with students about their futures. But on this crisp autumn morning at Berkeley, her alma mater, something was different. Instead of her signature pearls and power pumps, the vice president stepped onto the stage wearing a pair of limited edition Nike Air Force Ones, their pristine white leather accented with bold purple and gold swooshes. The students, who had been scrolling through their phones waiting for another standard political address, suddenly sat up straight. Phones came up not to check social media, but to capture this unprecedented moment. Here was the first female vice president of the United States, breaking centuries of political fashion protocol with a single pair of sneakers. "I thought long and hard about what to wear today," Harris began, a knowing smile playing across her face. "And I decided that if I'm going to talk to you about authenticity and breaking barriers, I should probably walk the walk, literally." The audience erupted in cheers and laughter. What Harris couldn't have known was that among the students in the audience that day was Maya Chen, a junior with 3.2 million TikTok followers and a knack for spotting cultural watersheds before they happened. As Harris spoke about climate change and educational reform, Maya's mind was racing with possibilities. The vice president's sneakers weren't just shoes, they were a statement, a revolution in rubber and leather. Before Harris had even finished her speech, Maya had uploaded a 15-second clip set to a remixed version of Run the World, Girls, by Beyoncé. The video zoomed in on Harris's feet as she walked across the stage, then cut to Maya recreating the look with her own pair of Air Force Ones, adding a blazer and pencil skirt. The caption read, "POV, when the VP serves more than just policy fire running shoe #Kamala style." By the time Harris's motorcade left campus, Maya's video had 50,000 views. By dinner, it had reached 1 million. And by the time the sun set on the West Coast, #Kamala style was trending #1 on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. But in a sleek office building in Beaverton, Oregon, the real storm was just beginning to brew. Nike's social media team was watching their mentions explode, and in the executive suite, a late-night emergency meeting was being called. The Vice President of the United States had just accidentally created the biggest marketing opportunity of the decade, and Nike wasn't about to let it slip away. Sarah Martinez, Nike's newly appointed head of special projects, stared at the viral footage playing on the massive screen in the conference room. She'd been at Nike for 15 years, but she'd never seen anything quite like this. The comments were flooding in from across the political spectrum. Conservatives, liberals, fashion enthusiasts, and political junkies were all talking about one thing, those sneakers. "We need to move on this," Sarah announced to the room of bleary-eyed executives. "But we need to do it right. This isn't just about selling shoes, this is about capturing a moment in history." As the meeting stretched into the early hours of the morning, none of them realized that what they were about to set in motion would change not just the fashion industry, but the very nature of political discourse in America. The sneakers that had started as a simple wardrobe choice were about to become a symbol of something much bigger, a generational shift in how America viewed power, politics, and personal expression. And somewhere in Berkeley, Maya Chen was already planning her next video, unaware that she was about to become the face of a movement that would sweep across the nation like wildfire. The morning after Harris's Berkeley appearance, Washington, D.C. woke up to a different kind of political circus. News channels that typically dissected policy positions were now running split-screen analyses of the vice president's footwear choices throughout her career. Fashion critics were being interviewed alongside political pundits, and the phrase "sneaker diplomacy" had somehow made its way into the morning headlines. But it was Maya Chen's TikTok that had truly captured lightning in a bottle. Her original video had spawned thousands of duets and recreations overnight. Young women across the country were posting their own #Kamala style videos, mixing professional attire with sneakers of every brand and color. The trend wasn't just about fashion, each video came with a story. Law students, medical residents, young executives, and activists shared how they were breaking barriers in their own fields. In New York, a Wall Street firm's dress code memo specifically banning sneakers with business attire went viral for all the wrong reasons. By lunchtime, female employees were staging an impromptu protest by wearing their athletic shoes to client meetings. Photos of their coordinated professional outfits paired with colorful sneakers flooded LinkedIn, adding fuel to the growing movement. At Nike headquarters, Sarah Martinez was running on 3 hours of sleep and her 6th cup of coffee. Her team had worked through the night, and now they were sitting on something explosive. They'd created a concept for a line of sneakers that wasn't just about fashion or politics, it was about revolution. The Kamala kicks won't just be shoes, Sarah explained to her team, gesturing to the mock-up spread across the conference room table. They'll be a statement. Each pair will tell the story of a different female barrier breaker in history. The designs featured subtle nods to women who had changed the world: Ruth Bader Ginsburg's iconic collar translated into a shoe pattern, Sally Ride's spacesuit reimagined as a color scheme, Frida Kahlo's art transformed into intricate stitching. But while Nike was planning their next move, the trend was taking on a life of its own. Maya Chen's following had tripled overnight, and she was being bombarded with messages from brands, news outlets, and even political organizations. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since 4 a.m. when Good Morning America had first tried to reach her. "Mom, I think I need an agent," Maya said into her phone, pacing her dorm room. "And maybe a lawyer?" She glanced at her laptop screen, where her inbox was flooding with opportunities and her original video had now crossed 50 million views. The real surprise came that afternoon when Vice President Harris's official Instagram account followed Maya and left a comment on her video, "Leading the next generation in style. Keep breaking those barriers." Running shoe sparkles. The comment itself went viral, spawning dozens of news articles about the generational shift in political communication. But not everyone was celebrating. Traditional political consultants were having collective meltdowns on cable news. The office of the vice president should not be reduced to a TikTok trend, thundered one veteran strategist on CNN. Meanwhile, conservative media had found their newest target, running segments about the sneakerification of American politics. That evening, as Maya sat in her favorite campus coffee shop trying to process her sudden fame, she received an email that made her coffee nearly slip from her hand. The subject line read, "Invitation to the White House," and it wasn't spam. The vice president's office wanted her to be part of a panel discussion on the next generation of leadership. In the Nike offices, Sarah Martinez was also reading an email from Pennsylvania Avenue, but this one was marked confidential. The White House was interested in discussing a partnership, but it had to be handled delicately. This wasn't just about selling sneakers anymore, it was about making history. As the sun set on the second day of the #KamalaStyle phenomenon, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The worlds of politics, fashion, and social media were about to collide in a way that would redefine power dressing for a new generation. And somewhere in a Berkeley dorm room, Maya Chen was about to learn that going viral was just the beginning of her story. The White House's Roosevelt Room had never seen a meeting quite like this one. Around the historic table sat an unlikely gathering: Vice President Harris's senior advisors, Nike's executive team led by Sarah Martinez, and Maya Chen, who was trying her best not to look overwhelmed by the presidential seal on her water glass. "Let's be clear," said Harris's chief of staff, leaning forward. "We're not endorsing a product. We're partnering on a youth empowerment initiative that happens to involve footwear." The Nike team nodded enthusiastically, while their lawyers scribbled notes. The meeting had been carefully choreographed to navigate the complex ethics regulations surrounding government officials and commercial products. Sarah Martinez unveiled the prototype for the Kamala Kicks collection. Each design was a masterpiece of subtlety, power dressing reimagined for the modern era. The lead design, dubbed the Madam Vice President, featured a sleek purple and gold colorway with a subtle pearl accent on the heel, a nod to Harris's signature accessory. But it was the social impact program attached to the launch that truly captured the room's attention. Each pair sold would help fund scholarships for young women entering fields where they were traditionally underrepresented. The shoes would come with a QR code linking to educational resources about women's history and leadership. "This isn't just fashion," Maya spoke up, surprising herself with her confidence. "It's about changing the conversation around what power looks like." The room fell silent, and she felt her cheeks flush, but Vice President Harris's senior advisor gave her an approving nod. Meanwhile, outside the White House gates, the hashtag Kamala style movement had evolved into something bigger than anyone had anticipated. Women in corporate boardrooms were showing up in sneakers and sharing their stories of breaking barriers. International political figures were being asked about their stance on sneaker diplomacy. A female prime minister in Europe had worn running shoes to a parliamentary session, citing Harris as inspiration. But with increased visibility came increased scrutiny. Conservative pundits were having a field day with what they called the Great Sneaker Scandal. Memes and countermemes flooded social media. Traditional feminist scholars debated whether the focus on fashion was a step backward for women in politics. The pressure was starting to wear on Maya. Her TikTok followers had grown to 5 million, but so had the criticism. For every supportive comment, there was a troll questioning her authenticity or calling her a sellout. Her inbox was full of death threats mixed with speaking engagement offers. She hadn't attended a class in person for days, watching lectures online from her dorm room where campus security kept watch. Sarah Martinez was facing her own challenges at Nike. The company's stock price was on a roller coaster as investors tried to gauge the potential success or backlash of the Kamala Kicks line. Other shoe companies were rushing to launch their own political-themed collections, creating a bizarre new category in the fashion industry, power sneakers. Late one night, as Sarah was reviewing the final designs, she received an urgent call. A conservative news outlet had obtained leaked photos of the prototype shoes and was planning to run a story claiming the line was an illegal collaboration between the government and private industry. The story would drop in hours, and social media was already buzzing with speculation. At the same time, Maya was on a video call with her new crisis management team, a sentence she never thought she'd say a week ago. They were discussing how to handle an upcoming interview with a major news network when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. KH." The vice president herself wanted to speak with her, but about what? As Maya stared at her phone, another notification popped up. The leaked Nike photos were starting to circulate online, and her name was being mentioned in the growing controversy. In the span of a week, what had started as a simple TikTok video had turned into a national conversation about power, politics, and progress. Now, with the leaked photos threatening to derail everything, the key players had to decide, would they back down in the face of controversy, or double down on their vision of changing how the world viewed women in power? As midnight approached in 3 different time zones, Sarah Martinez in Oregon, Maya Chin in Berkeley, and the vice president's team in Washington were all asking themselves the same question: how do you control a movement that's already taken on a life of its own? The Secret Service agent opened the door to the vice president's private office, and Maya Chin stepped inside, her heart pounding. Kamala Harris sat at her desk, still wearing the Nike Air Force Ones that had started it all. On a nearby coffee table, Maya spotted the prototype of the Kamala Kicks that had leaked online just hours ago. "Sit down, Maya," the vice president said warmly. "I think it's time we had a conversation about the storm we've accidentally created." She gestured to a chair, and Maya sank into it, trying to remember how to breathe normally. "The photos," Maya began, but Harris held up a hand. "The photos are just a symptom of something bigger," Harris said. "What we've created here, what you've helped create, it's challenging people's ideas about power, about leadership, about what's appropriate. And whenever you do that, there's going to be pushback." Across the country in Nike's Crisis Command Center, Sarah Martinez was orchestrating a bold response to the leak. Instead of playing defense, they would go on the offensive. Her team had worked through the night to prepare a comprehensive transparency report about the development of the Kamala Kicks line, complete with documentation of their compliance with government ethics regulations. But Sarah had another card to play. She pulled up a video conference with Maya, the vice president's communications team, and key social media influencers who had been part of the hashtag Kamala style movement. "We're not just launching a shoe line," Sarah announced to the assembled faces on her screen. "We're launching a conversation about what leadership looks like in the 21st century. And we're going to do it our way, not on cable news, but on social media, where this movement began." The plan was audacious. They would release behind-the-scenes content showing the true story of the Kamala Kicks development, focusing on the scholarship program and educational initiatives. Maya would lead a series of TikTok lives with young women in leadership positions, from startup CEOs to local politicians, all wearing their own versions of power sneakers. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening in response to the leaked photos. Instead of the anticipated backlash, women across the country began posting photos of their own worn-out sneakers with stories of where those shoes had taken them, through medical school, up the corporate ladder, across campaign trails. The hashtag #MyPowerShoes started trending, and the stories were powerful. A federal judge shared a picture of the running shoes she wore while studying for the bar exam. A NASA engineer posted the sneakers she wore during her first rocket launch. A newly elected state representative showed the shoes she wore while knocking on doors during her campaign. In the vice president's office, Harris showed Maya a shoebox that had been sitting on her desk. Inside were a pair of well-worn sneakers. "These," Harris said, "are the shoes I wore when I was district attorney of San Francisco. I used to keep a pair under my desk for the days when I knew I'd be standing in court for hours." Maya realized that what had started as a fashion statement had become something much more profound, a collection of stories about women's journeys to power, one step at a time. The leaked photos that were meant to scandalize had instead humanized. The controversy that was supposed to derail the launch had only made it more meaningful. But the biggest challenge still lay ahead. The official launch of the Kamala Kicks line was scheduled for the next day. Sarah Martinez's phone buzzed with a message from her team. Pre-orders were already flooding in, crashed servers were being restored, and social media was ablaze with anticipation. They had less than 24 hours to pull off the biggest launch in Nike's history. In Washington, the vice president's team was preparing for an unprecedented event, a joint presentation with Nike at a girls' leadership conference, where the scholarship program would be officially announced. And Maya, back in her dorm room that evening, stared at her original pair of Air Force Ones, now scuffed and worn from all the running around she'd done in the past week. Tomorrow, she would speak to an audience of young women about power, authenticity, and the unexpected ways that change happens. As she practiced her speech, her phone lit up with a notification. The conservative news outlet that had leaked the photos had just published a follow-up story. Maya's hand trembled as she clicked the link, wondering if this would be the bombshell that finally brought everything crashing down. Maya's hand shook as she read the conservative news outlet's headline, "Exclusive, the real story behind Kamala Kicks." But as she scrolled through the article, her anxiety turned to disbelief, then laughter. The bombshell was that the vice president had been wearing sneakers long before her Berkeley speech. The article had uncovered photos of Harris wearing running shoes during her early campaign days, thinking they'd exposed some kind of hypocrisy. Instead, they'd only reinforced the authenticity of the movement. The next morning dawned bright and clear in Washington, D.C., where the grand ballroom of the National Museum of Women in History had been transformed. Hundreds of young women filled the seats, many wearing their own combinations of professional attire and sneakers. The air buzzed with excitement as Sarah Martinez took the stage. "Today, we're not just launching a shoe line," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're celebrating every step that women have taken to break barriers, and every step they'll take in the future." She gestured to a wall behind her where photos were being projected, not professional marketing shots, but real pictures submitted through #MyPowerShoes, showing worn sneakers that had carried women through their journeys. The vice president's entrance was met with thunderous applause. She wore a perfectly tailored suit and, of course, a pair of the new Kamala Kicks. The design was even more striking in person, subtle yet powerful, with tiny embedded details that told stories of women's achievements throughout history. "When I was a little girl," Harris began, "my mother told me I would be the first to do many things. But she never told me what shoes to wear while doing them." The audience laughed. Style isn't just about what we wear, it's about how we carry ourselves, how we move through the world, and most importantly, how we lift others up as we climb. She went on to announce that the scholarship program would be even larger than initially planned. Nike had been joined by a coalition of companies pledging to support women entering male-dominated fields. The Kamala kicks would just be the beginning. They were launching a foundation to provide both financial support and mentorship. Maya's speech came next. Gone was the nervous college student from a week ago. In her place stood a poised young woman who understood her power. "A week ago, I posted a TikTok video," she said. "Today, I'm here to tell you that change doesn't always come from the top down. Sometimes it comes from a single step, a single moment when someone dares to be different." The launch was a triumph. The first run of Kamala Kicks sold out in minutes, with proceeds going directly to the scholarship fund. But more importantly, something had shifted in the cultural landscape. News coverage of female politicians began to focus more on their actions than their appearance. Young women reported feeling more confident in expressing their personal style in professional settings. 6 months later, Maya sat in her favorite campus coffee shop, wearing her own well-worn pair of Kamala Kicks. Her phone buzzed with a news alert, a photo of the first female president of a conservative African nation wearing sneakers to her inauguration, citing the hashtag Kamala.